الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: ولقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. صلوات عليكم. This is a majlis in between the majlis of Shahadat and the Zarbat of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. In the last few years, based on the request I had from some of the youths who wanted to hear the Masahib sometimes in English, in the last few years, what I've done is basically this majlis, which is brief, between the Zarbat and Shahadat. We dedicate this totally into English language, although those who would request, I don't see them anymore. But anyway, we'll keep up with that tradition. And I would like to connect with the theme of last night about the universality of the personality of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Especially his insistence on the value of justice. This was basically his life, this was his cause, and he ended up becoming the embodiment of justice in Islam and in the human society in general. For this evening, would like to share with you one sentiment or the feeling of a lady who was among the followers of Ahlul Bayt. And this is a lady who is known as Sauda bint Ammara bin al-Ashtar al-Hamdaniya. And she was from the family which believed in Amir al-Mu'mineen, from the Hamdaniya Yemeni family and the tribe. And she was a poetess in her own right. She was talented in composing poetry. And in the Battle of Siffin, interestingly, she was there with her brother. And she played her part in composing lines in order to encourage. Primarily what we see is that she is addressing her own brother who was there in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen, to move forward and fight for the cause of Ali. It seems that she was also a very courageous lady. When we see in history, after the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when Muawiyah comes to power, a situation happened in their area in Yemen that the governor sent there was a very cruel person, Ibn Artat. And the people of the tribe basically wanted to send a complaint to Muawiyah about this officer. But they couldn't find anyone more courageous and willing to go and represent them but this lady by the name of Sauda. And so she accepted this task. She went all the way to Damascus and sought the audience with Muawiyah. She was given the permission to go in. But before she comes in, Muawiyah was briefed about her. And of course, he also knew about the lines of poetry that she had against Muawiyah and his family. Where after coming in, after salam and the normal discussion after greetings, Muawiyah started reciting the lines of poetry that she had composed. And she says, aren't you the one who said this? شمر كفعل أبيك يا ابن عمار يوم التعاني وملتقى الأقران. Where she says, addressing her brother, she says, get ready like your father, O son of Ammara. On the day of fight when champions meet, وانصر عليا والحسين ورحته واقصد لهند وابنها بهوان. Support Ali and Hussein and his family and target Hind, the mother of Muawiyah, and her son with disgrace. إن الإمام أخ النبي محمد Alamul Huda wa Manaratul Iman, because the Imam, the true Imam, is the brother of the Prophet Muhammad, who is the sign, the Imam who is the sign of guidance, and the Minara, the minaret of Iman. فَقُدِ الْجُيُوشِ وَسِرْ أَمَامَ لِوَائِهِ. So therefore, O my brother, lead the armies of Ali and go ahead of his flag. قُدُمًا بِعَبْيَزِ صَارِمٍ وَسِنَانٍ. March forward with shining sword and arrows. So Muawiyah remembered even the words from Sauda bint Ammara. And of course, circumstances had changed. She had come for a different cause there. So she says, yes, these are my words, but this is an old event, it's gone now. Don't bring it up again. But Muawiyah says, your brother was a very courageous fighter. He cannot be forgotten that easily. And she said, yes, my brother was a very courageous person. And then Muawiyah says, now, so what is the purpose of your visit today? And look at her words and her courage, where she says, you are now the ruler of the people and control their affairs. And Allah will question you about your duty towards the people. You sent to us people who represent your power and might. This Ibn Artat has come to our land, he has killed our men, taken our property. وَلَوْلَا الطَّاعَ لَكَانَ فِينَا عِزٌّ وَمُنَعَةً. And she now says that if it had not been for our sense of obedience, we also have the power and ability to resist. It's kind of a, veil threat to Muawiyah, that we can actually rebel against this kind of attitude. فَإِمَّا عَظَلْتَهُ لَشَكَرْنَاكَ وَإِمَّا لَا فَعَرَفْنَاكَ. And so if you dismiss this fellow and send somebody who is better, then we will be thankful to you. And if you don't, then we will see how to meet you. Now you can imagine, Muawiyah being the absolute ruler of the Muslim empire at that time, with his arrogance and the way he deals with the people. He doesn't take these kinds of, veiled threats easily. So he says, you are threatening me on basis of your tribe and the power that your tribe has. By Allah, I intend to send you in a shorter camel, means I'll ask my people to tie you and torture you, back to my governor, who will implement his judgment against you. And this is how Muawiyah deals with women. And so Sauda was silent for a moment. But then this is where her, the courage and the talent comes in. Extempore, she started reciting words right away, where she says, صَلَّى الْإِلَهِ عَلَى رُوحٍ تَضَمَّنَهُ قَبْرٌ فَأَصْبَحَ فِيهِ الْعَدْلُ مَدْفُونًا. May Allah shower His blessings on the person who was contained by the grave, means when he died and he was buried, and so justice was buried with him. قَدْ حَالَفَ الْحَقِّ لَا يَبْغِ بِهِ ثَمَنًا فَصَارَ بِالْحَقِّ وَالْإِيمَانِ مَقْرُونًا. He had pledged to the truth that he will never sell it at any cost. And so he ended up being one with the truth and with faith and with Iman. So when she saw this attitude of arrogance and zulm for Muawiyah, this is how she now remembers somebody else. And so Muawiyah says, whom are you remembering in these lines? And she says, I am remembering none but Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Very, very powerful words where she says, صَلَّى الْإِلَهِ عَلَى رُوحٍ فَضَمَّنَهُ قَبْرٌ فَأَصْبَحَ فِيهِ الْعَدْلُ مَدْفُونًا. May Allah shower His salawat and blessings on the soul. تَضَمَّنَهُ قَبْرٌ, when the grave took him in, فَأَصْبَحَ فِيهِ الْعَدْلُ مَدْفُونًا. It was not Ali who was buried in there, it was Adl which was buried with him. Means when Ali went, justice is gone. This is what we get from people like you. And so Muawiyah says, what do you know about the justice of Ali? And she says, I'm actually remembering the day where I went to him with a similar complaint like I've come here today. And I went inside, he was doing his nafila prayers. He sensed I was there, he shortened his prayers, turned to me and he said, what is your hajat? Why have you come here? And when I presented the case of his revenue officer, who was being, harsher than required in his dealing with the issue of, taking revenue for the government, Amir al-Mu'mineen, according to her, he cried at that time on the musalla, raised his hands and says, Allahumma inni lam amur bi dhulmi khalqiq. O Allah, you be witness, I did not ask my officers to be unjust to the people. If someone from my officer has done this, it's not because I have asked them to do this. And he immediately asked for the paper and pen, and he wrote a letter to this person, instructing him to come back as soon as he gets the letter, so that he can then, present his own side of the story. And this is where we see that when it comes to the sense of adl and justice, Amir al-Mu'mineen was very well known, and it's not only among the men that we hear, even the women who were there, supporting his cause, and later on they had this, willingness to stand up in front of Muawiyah in a very threatening situation, but still remembering Ali and praising Ali. There are similar events like this. And it's very interesting that the Sunni scholars themselves have actually compiled a booklet, where the title in Arabic says that, the women who went and confronted Muawiyah. There is one version of it which says the women who said La to Muawiyah. I mean, that was their attitude. And these, if you look at those stories, you will see most of them were from the Shi'i community of the time. One of them actually, when Muawiyah at the end listened to the whole story, he says, what do you want? And she says, these are the requests that I have, the list, what do we want? And Muawiyah said, I'll give you more than that. Will I be replaced with Ali in your heart then? And she says, no. You can give me whatever you want. And I'm sure if I had gone to Ali and asked for that, he would have said that no, because Ali would not give to anyone anything from Baytul Mal, but that person has the right for it. You are just giving it because you want to please people. And so that is the difference between you and Ali. So don't ask me that, by giving me things, I'm going to replace, Ali with you in my heart. No, that is still something we cannot negotiate on that issue. And so this is the sense of adl that we see at that time, which also manifests when we look at this Christian writer that I mentioned yesterday, that he gives this title, Sawtul Adalat al-Insaniya to Ali, the voice of human justice. This is amazing that there are so many personalities in the history of Islam. He is not even a Shi'i, he is a Christian. But when he studies, he sees that this title, that someone becoming the voice of human justice, does not apply to anyone but Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Ali was even kind to the enemies. There are so many examples we have in his life, and inshallah tomorrow we'll discuss even more about it, that how was the attitude of Amir al-Mu'mineen in dealing with the enemies, let alone those who were friends. Look at the case of Ibn Muljim. And some of the young people have difficulty in understanding that that Amir al-Mu'mineen knew Ibn Muljim and what is he and what are his intentions. There was a time when Ibn Muljim was there to collect the monthly distribution from Baytul Mal. And his name was also there in the list. And Amir al-Mu'mineen was standing there looking at the distribution of the Baytul Mal, the money being given out to the people. And he noticed Ibn Muljim in the line, and he says to one of his companions, أُرِيدُ حَيَاتُهُ وَيُرِيدُ قَتْلِي. I desire his life, but he is looking forward to my murder. And so this fellow says that if that is the case, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you know what are his intentions, why don't you just arrest him? And this is where justice comes in. He says he has not yet committed the crime. Ali knew about it, not because of the normal channels of the spies and this and that. No, this was ilm al-ghayb. And we get this question sometimes that, if he knew, why didn't he stop? This is where we have to realize, and just to make it very brief, to have ilm al-ghayb is actually an extra burden on these awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are given the knowledge of the unseen, the thoughts and the minds of the people, what they have in their minds and their thoughts, but they are not allowed to use it when it comes to themselves. They can only use the ilm given to them if they have to prove the truth of the madhab or the claim of imamat. They cannot use it for their own personal issues. And that makes their imtihan, their test and trial even more difficult. It's easy for us to go through a difficulty and challenging, not knowing what is in the next step, next day or next week. But if you know because of the supernatural means of knowledge that given to you, still you are going through the natural cause and effect in life, that becomes even more challenging and difficult. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, didn't do that. He knew, but he doesn't, do anything because he knows that he's not allowed to use his ilm al-ghayb for such cases. Even when he goes into the Masjid Kufa, he knew Ibn Muljim was there with the sword. What are his intentions? But he couldn't do anything. Because you cannot punish a person because of the intention, especially if your knowledge is based on, ilm al-ghayb and not your normal means of information. And this is where we see that the musibat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that when he goes into the sajda, all of us go into sajda. And when we get up, normally we get up with a kind of a speed getting up. And you can imagine as soon as Amir al-Mu'mineen was there in the sajda, and when he says, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la wa bihamdi, and after doing the zikr when he is getting up, Ibn Muljim was waiting for that moment. As soon as Amir al-Mu'mineen goes into sajda, he took out the sword, he comes to the mihrab closer to Amir al-Mu'mineen and striked it. He just struck the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen in such a way that when the person who was the doctor of the city came to, check Amir al-Mu'mineen, he basically said that the sword had penetrated all the way to the brain. And the poison which was there in the sword had gone into the mouth. And so there is no cure for that. When we hear about it, even then, look at the sense of justice and adl of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He indeed is the embodiment of justice and fairness. You can just imagine when a person had been struck in that way, somebody who was known for his courage, somebody who never wore a armor at the back because he never was afraid of, running away from the enemy. He would always confront the enemy. On that day, in the dawn of 19th of Ramadan, Ali could not even stand up. But while he was sitting there, And when the family members came in, when the companions surrounded him, they saw that Ibn Muljim had been arrested, and they were bringing Ibn Muljim close. Even at that time, Amirul Mu'mineen was not concerned about his own pain. When he saw Ibn Muljim, the first thing he says to Imam Hassan, he says, Ya bunayya irfaq bi'asirik, O my son, be kind to your prisoner. Imam Hassan said, Baba, he is the one who has basically made us orphan. He has, tried to kill you in this way, and you are advising about him. And this is where Amir al-Mu'mineen says, remember, we are from the family of the Rahmatul Lil Alameen. Look at the face of Ibn Muljim. He looks so much, scared here. Be kind and merciful to him. Even when Amir al-Mu'mineen was taken at the home, and when the tabib and the doctor comes in, he basically told the family that do not give anything to Ali but milk. When the bowl of milk was brought to Ali, he just drank half of it, and he said, send the other half to Ibn Muljim, because maybe he is not being taken care of, because you are all, taking care of me. Azadara and Hussein, let me just mention something I heard from Sheikh Kafi, a very famous orator in Iran during the early days in the 70s, where he says that when the news spread in Kufa that Ali cannot eat or drink anything but milk, many of the children, when their mothers brought milk to them, they would say that, Mama, we don't want this. Take this bowl of milk to the house of Ali, because the tabib has said that Ali cannot eat or drink anything but milk. This was the sense of love that women and men and children had towards Amirul Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib. Matama Syed.